County of Fortune hit just right during the Steam Next Fest. With the game's follower list doubling, I can't be the only one who just found this absolute gem. The game is a mix between a city builder and a kingdom logistics management game with some 4X strategy sprinkled on top. You start out with a humble one-region setup, allowing you to familiarize yourself with the microeconomics and the production chain of each region. Each region contains separate settlements, all connected to each other with roads. Vendors will then travel these roads to distribute goods within the region's settlements. The goods distributed, chickpeas for example, can then be used by the settlements to increase production rates and later on even unlock new build slots. Close the settlement window. I love games that lets you right-click to close windows. That is so convenient and should be in all games. None of that escape or clicking on something that's nothing or anything like that. No, just let me right click. And if you have a modular window, it should even be so you can right click a specific window and it closes that window only. Soon enough, you have a few settlements built and realize you've hit the settlement limit for the region and can't expand any further. This is when you will be introduced to the game's build slots system. Each settlement takes 2 additional products to add an equal amount of build slots to the settlement itself, allowing you to have up to 3 slots for each settlement. To start with, we can produce wooden chests and wool tunics as equipment. We're already producing logs, so that's the natural first option. Logs coming from the logging camp, going into the wood chest production, which is then distributed throughout the settlement with vendors. With wooden chests in production, we can now take aim to level up our settlement, starting with Kersey. The requirements to level up is to fulfill all the food and equipment needs. We already have a buckwheat farm and a sheep's farm built, so I'll add buckwheat as one of the settlement's food needs and build a wool tunics workshop on this little hill here. Wooden chests and wool tunics cover our equipment needs nicely, while mashed peas and the buckwheat flatbread improves the building's production efficiency. As our final food product, we'll add beans production. Thanks to our expansion in building slots, we can add a bean farm to the settlement where we have the logging camp, and then we'll add mashed beans to the food menu in all of the cities. A short while later, we can finally upgrade Kersey to a level 2 settlement. Level 2 unlocks a new tier of resource: fish, ceramic tableware, and a whole herd of other products, all thanks to the second tier of workers made available, the commoners. A small problem shows its face here. Ceramic tableware needs clay. Have you seen any clay within our settlement? Me neither. It is time for another mechanic and my most anticipated part of the game. If you wonder how this is different to a normal city builder, this is where that distinction kinda begins. It's time to build our second region. But before that, I have to touch upon the UI. You know I'm a huge fan of the UI and UX conversation. We're looking for somewhere to build a clay mine. This overlay to find clay and other static resources is just bad. They get around this in the beginning of the game by highlighting where to put your first settlement and having stone so close to that location that you don't really need to zoom out on the map to find it. Zooming out, on the other hand, it's a lot harder to see the difference between clay, stone and iron resources. Why is the hill green in the first place? To add salt into injury, we are unable to delete settlements after they're placed. This is not a missing feature in the demo, it's a feature mentioned in the codex of the game itself. Once established, settlements cannot be moved or removed. With settlements being so permanent, the UI element to place them needs to be extremely easy to read and understand. With that said, you likely only do this error once, but the friction is just unnecessary. Thankfully, the game has an autosave function, so we can revert back to an earlier save. With the save reloaded, this is what we're looking at. Can you see the clay? You might say that green rock-like structure is where you would place it. Here maybe? Maybe here? Actually, what you need to look for is a slight blue tint on the ground underneath the green rock. If it's not blue, it's not a valid location for your current settlement. So the clay mine will go right here, and a second settlement will be placed just below, mostly to produce lentils. Just like in the last region, this will have to meet the basic food and equipment needs all on its own. With the basics up and running, we can finally start producing the pottery we got here for. With that built, we can also set up our first trade route. Ceramic tableware back to the dark wood. There is two ways to set up a trade route. Either you select a specific amount to be transferred, or you simply click this checkbox and the amount to be transferred will be tracking with the needs of the target region itself. This auto option is what will carry the trade system into the late game when you have multiple sprawling trade networks. To add to this, traders will also bring a small amount of resources to balance all of the extra resources available in each region, so you will see traders holding more than just the one item that you select. But alas, as you can see, this indicates we do not have a valid trade route. This is because we don't have a building that facilitates trade. There's two different buildings making trade possible. You have raft ports and you have small markets. We initially built a port in Selburn, but that simply won't work. The port trades through rafts that only travel in one direction, along the river. The river flows from our first region to this new region, not the other way around. Instead, we can build a small market that will facilitate trade caravans that will go on land instead. On land, you can't transport heavy cargo, stone, raw clay, logs, etc. But we are only trading ceramic tableware, so not an issue for us. What is an issue is that we still need the pottery to be constructed, which needs carpentry from logs, which we already have, but stone masonry, we still need that. There is no stone available to this region. We need to bring this from the previous area. But heavy resources only travel on water, so we need that port anyway. The only place where a raft port in our new region can go is in Wing. In our first region, we already have a raft port in the one place where we're able to build it. From here we can see 14 stone being moved from Darkwood to Deepwoods. But stone doesn't produce ceramic tableware, unfortunately. With the raft port now built in the town Wing, we will now need a pottery in Selburn. So let's summarize this. We needed new equipment to expand our first region. We created a new region, produced basic food and equipment, once again. To construct the pottery, we needed stone from the first region, which can only be traded using the river. We have now already used our 2 slots in our level 2 cities for the single direction raft trade port and the pottery building. We can then use the ceramic tableware to unlock our second slot for each of the level 2 cities we have. This will then allow us to finally place a small market to transfer the ceramic tableware back to the Darkwood region. In other words, we started with a need for clay to produce ceramic tableware for the first region. We ended up with ceramic tableware in the first city and a whole new region ready to produce whatever else is needed. Both cities are now ready to support each other's growth. In the meantime, we got to test the knowledge we gained while building our first region, introduce ourselves to the trading system, and get a head start in the newly built city. Dear Lord, I love well-designed production chains. From here, our focus shifts. We have already learned and implemented settlement logistics and how to manage the regional production needs. Now we're focusing on balancing production quotas between the two regions themselves, mostly through the use of the trade menu. Regardless how much we fiddle with the trade menu options, however, eventually we come to the conclusion that 2 regions alone does not produce enough food and equipment to satisfy the second-tier citizens. I think you see where this is going. Time for another region to produce more food and grain for flour, I guess. As we build up this region, mostly due to increased traffic from the trade routes we've added, this happens. Road traffic's too high. Upgrade the road if possible. Oh no. That's our first time. And we're back to basics. The individual routes here drives roads above their upper traffic limits. Easier pronounced, all roads require consistent traffic to not become overgrown and cause a movement penalty. But too high traffic also limits movement. Too much traffic on a road and you'll end up with villagers having an even worse movement penalty than a road never traveled before. To begin with, this can be controlled with upgraded roads. Once your city is big enough, you might be better off looking at the need to reroute some of the traffic through other roads, instead of simple road upgrades. There's a lot of little systems to interact with in the background as well. You have the culture system. This introduces production bonuses based on the demographic of your immigration, meaning you have limited control over it for now. The game hints at more ways to control culture in the future, using things like taverns and other entertainment items, I guess. But in the demo, the culture seems to be a fairly passive stat that you can somewhat influence through different random events, but that's about it. Next we have the noble houses. These are closely tied to the mayor system. I left out so much. I'm sorry for the next few minutes of me just rambling off way too many cool features that should have made it into the video, but just didn't have a great slot. The noble houses is the 3 factions you can recruit as mayors in each of the regions. Each of these noble houses are represented by the 3 shield insignias, most commonly found in the top left-hand corner of each mayor's portrait. There are 2 different indicators that you will be balancing, power as well as relation. The impact of these are honestly not very well explained in the game's codex. Power represents how powerful a house is. Relationship represents your relationship with the house. Thanks for saying absolutely nothing. But Keanomy, surely the tutorial explains it better. Most of the tutorial walk you through each step in very great detail after all. Yeah, no. Open the Noble Houses overview. Read the Noble Houses section in the codex. While I truly appreciate the RTFM themed early 90s inspired tutorialization, this is like Apple referring to the manual when you are troubleshooting your iPhone 78X, only for the manual to read, contact your local authorized repair shop as step 1. But I would like to provide whatever information I have found valuable. Keeping the noble houses balanced in power and relationship seems to improve the likelihood you avoid negative traits on your mayors when you're recruiting. Talking about recruiting, your best way to absolutely tank a house's relationship to you is to fire or replace a mayor of said house. I didn't realize the impact of this and spent hours working around recruiting mayors with negative production traits instead of positive ones. This is a trickle-down effect as well, due to random events having different outcomes depending on your mayor levels. The game does hint at this, saying dissatisfied or overly powerful houses can complicate your actions. Obviously an answer shrouded in darkness. Let's chalk this whole thing up to early iteration of the codex, which can obviously be improved as the developers get a little bit closer to the full release. I went into this demo with slight hesitation, but I found it to be a total banger. The trade mechanics, progression chains, and the combination of city and kingdom builder really struck a great balance with me. I particularly enjoyed the dynamically growing settlements that mix each of the production elements naturally within the settlement itself. It's a very impressive and satisfying visual. The developer did announce an extension to the demo, making it available for another couple of weeks after the Steam Next Fest is over. As my top selection during the Steam Next Fest, you really should take a good look at this demo. A link is available in the description as well. If you're thinking what the next couple of weeks means, that's all courtesy of the developer at this point. If you enjoyed this video or Have any other demo suggestions? Feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, bye bye.